Mufti Sahib, the next slide, please. Okay, now, as most of our religion, and as you know, most parts of our religion are based on modesty, and modesty is a really, really big part of Islam. So the same way, the biggest principle that the Islamic dress code is based on is modesty. Just like we know from Hadith, where Prophet ﷺ said that al-haya'u wal-'iyyu shu'batani min al-iman, that modesty and shyness are two branches of faith. And then Prophet ﷺ also said that if you feel no shame, do as you wish. And then there's another hadith as well where Prophet ﷺ said, Al-haya'u min al-imani wal-imanu fil jannah, that modesty is part of faith and faith is in Jannah. So from that, we understand that the Islamic dress code is going to be based on modesty, and modesty is a very, very big part of our faith. And whoever has modesty, whoever has shyness, then inshallah, that's a sign of their iman, and whoever has strong iman, with inshallah, that will lead them to Jannah. And Prophet ﷺ also said that modesty is part of iman. Now, modesty is following the Islamic guidelines to avert indecency and then maintaining good conduct. But modesty is not only in what we wear, primarily it's in our heart and in our mind. And then if we have modesty in our heart and in our mind, that comes out in what we wear and the actions that we do. But if we don't have modesty in our heart and in our mind, where we don't feel any shame, then we'll do as we wish, as in we'll say things which are immodest, for example, swearing, or we might do things which are not modest. Or then it also comes out in clothes as well, where we wear clothes which are not modest because we don't feel that shame that we are supposed to feel. And then it's also in behavior, speech, and appearance. And the main thing behind modesty is having Allah in your mind, that, oh, I feel so ashamed to dress this way because Allah's looking at me and I don't want to upset Allah, and that upsets me, or because of that I feel ashamed. So, and especially in this day and age, modesty is not just what we wear or what we say. Another very big part is what we watch and read as well. So for example, if you're on your phone and you're scrolling through things that you're not supposed to, even though nobody is there, and obviously because of the social media apps today and the constant adverts that come on, some of them are very immodest, then you would feel embarrassed to look at them because you know that my Allah is looking at me, even though nobody else is looking at me, and I feel embarrassed doing this in front of Allah. And there should even be haya in the places that we go to, and even how we treat others, that I don't want to treat somebody in a bad way because that person is a servant of Allah and that person is beloved to Allah. So I feel embarrassed in treating somebody that is a servant of Allah badly. Next slide, please. Now, the question is that in Islam, and why are we asked to cover up? And especially in this day and age, because the media, they question Islam a lot, and one of the main things that they attack is our Islamic dress code. But behind our Islamic dress code, there is in actual fact a lot of wisdom behind it. It's not only that Islam is strict and Islam wants you to dress conservative and that's it. Now, obviously, the first one is Allah wants us to do it. We love Allah, so we will do it. That is the most, if our Iman was strong, then that would be fine for us. We wouldn't really question, as was with the Sahabiyat, which we're going to look at later on. Whenever they were given an order, they'd say that, okay, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has told us, Allah has ordered us, we're just going to do it. No questions asked. But we're not like that. We want to know the wisdom behind it, the reasoning behind it. And there are quite a few reasons. Now, one of them is safety and security. We all know that if we dress more modest and if we cover ourselves up, then we'll save ourselves from the evil glances of men, and we'll even avoid being the subject of sexual harassment. Now, I know this is a topic a lot that you find in the media, that why do women have to cover up? Men should learn to refrain themselves even if the women are uncovered. Yes, that is true. But remember, men have to do their part and we women have to do our part as well. Just like, for example, if you've got a house, you're not going to leave the doors unlocked and the doors open and the windows open and all your, for example, gold jewelry out, and then say the burglars shouldn't be burgling our house or the robbers shouldn't be robbing in our house. We should be able to do and leave our houses as and how we wish. That's absolutely true, but that doesn't mean that we don't take precautions. So that is one of the reasons, and there is a link between dressing modestly and avoiding harassment, which we're going to look at in the Quranic ayat later on. Another one of the benefits is that it keeps society clean, safe from zina, from dawa'i zina as well, things that lead to zina. Now, for example, if somebody is dressed in a provocative way, then that one glance could lead to eye contact and then somebody messaging each other. Or for example, it happens a lot on social media. It's always somebody looks good or somebody's dressed really nice, and then that could lead on to, that one interaction could lead on to a full relationship and zina. And then when we have zina, we have so many other social problems as well. For example, pregnancy outside marriage, or marriages breaking up, and so many other problems. Now, Islam, if you look at Islam properly, Islam always cuts off the problem right from the root. So it doesn't let the problem happen. Whereas what humans tend to do is we try to look for a solution after the problem has happened. So Islam is saying dress properly and avoid mingling with the other gender so we don't have these problems, so we're not later on dealing with those problems. And another wisdom behind it is that in reality, liberty, honor, freedom, respect is in covering up. Even though the shaitan tells us that the more you uncover, the more freedom you have. The way, however you dress, however you want to dress, and you're able to dress like that, then that means that you have got freedom. But remember, the human mind and the human brain is very weak. We really don't know what's right and wrong for us. Sometimes it might take us years to understand that what we were doing for so many years was a mistake and I should have done it another way. But Allah knows us, Allah created us, so obviously knows us. That's why He has made some guidelines for us, and those guidelines are the best for us. So Allah has said that in covering up, you have freedom, that's your honor, that's your respect. And also, if you look, even in the non-Muslim world, the people who are higher up in society, or for example, let's look at the Queen, you won't see her revealing certain body parts, or you won't see her in a very tight dress. She's always mostly dressed modestly. So that tells us that even in the non-Muslim world, honor and respect is actually in covering up. Next slide, please. It's a slide before that, Mufti Sahib. Now, another thing is, I'm sure you've heard this before, that precious things are found covered up like diamonds, gold, things which are precious. We always cover them up, and even in the ground, they found really, really deep in the ground. And even things that we have of value, we lock them up, put them away safely, put them at the back of the cupboard. So what does that tell us? That things which are of value, which are of importance, are not left lying around openly for the whole world to see. So because we are so precious to Allah, that's why Allah wants us to cover up, so that no harm comes to us, or we do nothing bad happens to us. And another important one is that it creates a healthy society that prioritizes character over physical form, and it cures the unhealthy obsessions around looks and clothing, so we can concentrate on our real purpose. And especially in the days of social media, where everything is about the way we look, the way we dress, the way our houses are, and everything like that. So Allah wants to draw our attention away from what we wear and our bodies and the way we look, and then divert our attention to our real purpose, which is obviously doing ibadat of Allah. But if we're so consumed in the way that we look and in what we wear, and we're spending hours and hours and so much money on that as well, then we won't be able to spend our time, energy, and money on what we really need to do, which is the ibadat of Allah. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, there's a hadith where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, and Nabi Hurairah radiallahu anhu قال Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, nisa'un kasiyatun ariyatun ma'ilatun mumilatun la yadkhulna al-jannata wa la yajidna rihaha wa rihuha yujadu min masirati 500 am. So Prophet ﷺ said, some women are clothed, nisa'un kasiyatun, ariyatun, but they are actually naked. Ma'ilatun, they incline to evil, mumilatun, and seducing with it. So even though they've got clothes on, basically you can see everything. And the way they are dressed in that way is because they want to seduce men and attract men. And what has Allah said about them? La yadkhulna al-jannata. They won't enter Jannah, but forget not entering it. Wala yajidna rihaha. They won't even be able to smell the fragrance of Jannah. In itself is a big deprivation. Even though the fragrance of Jannah can be smelt from 500 years of travel. So even though the smell is so strong and obviously so sweet and beautiful, but that will be one of the punishments for the people who don't dress modestly. Next slide, please. Read someone before that, Mufti Sahib. And another one where it's very similar. And Nabi Hurairah radiallahu anhu qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, sinfani min ahli nari lam arahuma. So two groups from the people of Jahannam whom I've not seen. قوم معهم سيات كأذناب البقر يضربون بها الناس. And this is the part that we're looking at. وَنِسَاءٌ كَاسِيَاتٌ عَارِيَاتٌ مُمِيلَاتٌ مائلات رؤوسهن كأسنمة البخت المائلة لا يدخلن الجنة ولا يجدن ريحها وإن ريحها ليوجد من مسيرة كذا وكذا. So it's the same women who will be naked although they are clothed. Prophet ﷺ is saying that I've not seen that group of women yet. So at the time of Nabi ﷺ, even though the time of Jahiliyyah had passed, they hadn't stooped so low to remove their clothing in such a manner that it is today. For us to understand this hadith, it's like we don't even need to think. Every other picture we see is in reference to this hadith. And it's the same, even though who are naked, even though they are clothed, inclined to evil and seduced with it, their heads will be like the humps of a camel. So the hairstyles that they do, or even today we can say about the hijab, that's the different hijab styles that we have, They will not enter paradise and they will not smell its fragrance, even though it can be detected from great distance. So that's something to think about, and yeah, something to think about, and think about how much it upsets Allah that Allah would want to give such a punishment, because Allah only gives punishment in accordance to the sin. Next slide, please. Now, let's look at the actual ayats in the Quran on Islamic dress code, and what does the Quran say. In these ayats, I'm only going to focus on the part which is relevant to the Islamic dress code. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. So tell the believing women that they should lower their gaze. وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ, and guard their modesty. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ, and not display their beauty. إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا, except which is obvious. وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُورِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ, and they should draw their veils over their chest area. So this is a part that we're going to focus on. وَلْيَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُورِهِنَّ عَلَى جُيُوبِهِنَّ. Khumur, as in their veils, juyub, chest area. وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ, and that part, the next step I will look at that who you can show your beauty to. And then another ayat as well, the next ayat, Ya ayyuhan a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu kulli azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minin yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna. Now this is a part that we're going to look at. Yudnina alayhinna, draw their cloaks. Min jalabibihinna is cloaks or coats or a long sheet of cloth. ذَلِكَ أَدْنَى أَن يُعْرَفْنَ, that is less likely they are recognized, as in so they are not recognized. فَلَا يُؤْذَيْنَ, so they are not harmed. So over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ, that wear your cloaks, cover yourself properly, so you are not recognized and you are not harassed. So that is the link between clothing and harassment. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا, and Allah is ever forgiving and most merciful. So we're going to look at those ayats a bit more in detail. Next slide, please. Now, another one is where there's a hadith that Hazrat Aisha narrated that the wives of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to go out at night to the places where they used to go to relieve themselves. Now that was in the direction of Jannatul Baqi, and people could see them. And in these areas, normally what used to happen was immoral men used to stay there, and then they used to sexually harass the women going there. And Hazrat Umar didn't like this. So he used to say to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that let your wives be veiled. So he just used to advise Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that, oh, when your wives go out, you should ask them to cover up so that they're not recognized. So the men that stand around in those areas on purpose to harass the women, they won't harass them, because they know, okay, this woman is covered up. She comes from an honorable family, so we should leave her alone. Then one night, Hazrat Sauda bint Zam'a radiyallahu anha, the wife of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, she went out at Isha time, and she was a tall woman. And Hazrat Umar said to her, radiyallahu anhu, we have recognized you, O Sauda. So Hazrat Umar wanted to make a point here. So he said to her, I know who you are. I know you're Sauda. I know you're the wife of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now the reason he said that was he was hoping that the ruling of hijab would be revealed. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did reveal the ruling of hijab. And another one on Islamic dress code, another ayah is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقرن في بيوتكن ولا تبرجن تبرج الجاهلية الأولى. Now that's the part that we're going to look at. وقرن في بيوتكن, that settle in your homes, وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Do not display yourselves as the women did in the days of pre-Islamic ignorance. So we're going to look at that properly as well later on. That what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trying to say? Okay, next slide, please. Now, the first ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to wear a khimar, that was one of the first ayats that we looked at. We're going to look at that ayah properly. Now, what was the sababin nuzul, the occasioning event? What happened which made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveal this ayah? It was that at the beginning of Islam and in the times of Jahiliyyah as well, women used to cover their hair, but they used to leave their necks exposed. Allah revealed the verse to change the way they wore their khimar by ordering them to let their scarves fall to cover their necklines. Now, even in the days of Jahiliyyah, pre-Islam, women used to cover their hair. But like we have topis today that we wear under our dupattas, they just used to wear that. So it was just the topi and their neckline and their chest area, and everything was uncovered. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to extend that, and He wanted us to wear a khimar. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this ayah. Now, just about covering the hair as well. So that is one of the very, very important parts of Islam, to cover our hair. There's so much hikmat behind covering our hair. It's not just about modesty. It's not just about men not looking at us. Remember, shayateen are attracted to hair. So used to save ourselves from the shayateen as well. And malaika do enter our houses if we don't have a hijab on, even within our own houses. Now, I was just listening to a bayan of Hazrat Yusuf Mutala Sahib Rahmatullahi Alayhi. And in that bayan, he was saying that women at home should cover their hair as well. And the reason being was that if you have your hair uncovered, the malaika feel too ashamed to enter the room which you are in, or the house which you are in. So the malaika of rahmah won't enter that house. And if the malaika of rahmah are not entering that house, then there's not going to be rahmah, mercy, peace, happiness, and blessings in that house. So remember, even though you're within your own home, and yes, you are allowed to dress however you want within some guidelines in your own home, but please bear in mind that there are going to be angels there. So we don't want to make them feel ashamed and then they leave the room because of the way that we are dressing. So now let's look at the word khimar. Khimar, it basically means, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word khimar in the ayah, a covering. Between people, it means a head covering. So anything that covers your head could be used as a khimar. And that was a normal use before Islam. And then it continued within the Muslim community. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the ayah of Surah Nur, which tells us to cover our necklines as well. Drew bihinna, our necklines. So in conclusion, the khimar should not only cover your head, it should also cover your neck and your chest. So bodies, faces, necks, and chest area. Now the question is, we have a trend these days that people wear turbans. So the question I'm asking you is, do you think a turban is a khimar? And do you think it falls under the guidelines of Islamic dress code? Because remember, Islamic dress code is not only about covering the hair. That was already done in the days of Jahiliyyah. So if we start wearing a turban, remember we are moving 1500 years backwards. Next slide, please. Now, I just want you to see these two pictures. This is what we would consider as a khimar. If you look at the first one, some of us may call it a burqa. So that is what covers your full area. or even a dupatta, but a long one which covers your chest area and your neck area properly, that would be a khimar. So a small scarf would not fulfill the guidelines of Sharia. Next. Now, in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us quite a few things. One was lower your gaze from looking at what is haram to be seen of men, as in don't look at men. So the same way we don't look at men, we don't want men to look at us as well. Guard the private parts, as in stay away from zina, conceal all of our body and its adornments except what is apparent of it. Now in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that cover your beauty except what is apparent of it, illa ma dhahara minha, and what is obvious and apparent is, according to some ulama, it's your face and hands. So apart from your face and hands, everything else is satar, so it all has to be covered. Now some ulama say it only means the eyes, so everything else has to be covered except for the eyes. The ayat also tells us to wear a khimar, which we have already discussed. And then there's a few guidelines about mahram. And then the last one is not to stamp the feet or act in a way that what is hidden becomes known to others. So basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is that when you go outside, don't make a lot of noise, don't stamp your feet, don't make a lot of noise with your heels, or if you're wearing footwear like that. So people who are not even looking towards you will look towards you, because then from then on, remember, zina starts from the first glance. So that could then lead on to so many problems. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just cutting the problem off the root, that don't attract attention towards yourself. Next slide, please. Now, the other ayah was about the jilbab. Yudnina alayhinna min jalabibihinna. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask us? So first thing is we have to wear a khimar. And you should know what a khimar is. The next thing is we need to wear a jilbab. Now, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask us to wear a jilbab? So the immoral men used to harass women when they came out in the evening to relieve themselves. So Allah's women were told to lower their jilbab so that in the evening they could not be recognized and not harassed. So one of the main reasons we wear what we are told to wear is because we don't want to be recognized and we don't want to be harassed. Now, what is a jilbab? A jilbab is, there are two opinions amongst the scholars. One is it's a loose outer garment like an abaya or a cloak. So what you wear on top of your clothes, that is a jilbab. So basically a jabba or a abaya or a cloak. And the second opinion is because a jabba or a abaya or a cloak will start from your neckline. So that's your first opinion. Your second opinion is it's a sheet which covers your whole body except for your eyes. So basically this, you've probably seen it if you go to Umrah, Hajj, and you see the Iranian women mostly, they wear like a whole sheet it starts from the top of their head and it covers everything except for one eye or just the eyes maybe. So that's the second opinion, that it's a whole sheet starting from the top of your head. Now, the jilbab is a material, it's much, much wider than a khimar. It covers the whole body, including the hair. So that's according to the other opinion. And it's worn over your clothes. So a jilbab is not there to cover your aura. It's not there to cover your satar. Your satar should have already been covered by your normal clothes that you are wearing. And then on top of that, you wear a jilbab, a loose piece of clothing or a loose sheet or a loose abaya, which then covers everything else. And then you wear a khimar with it as well. So from that, we understand that you wear your normal clothes and then you wear a jilbab and you wear a khimar as well. Now, a good way to remember this is that how many sheets that women supposed to wear is, remember the coffin of a woman. The coffin of a woman, there's 5 sheets in there. So it's the same. We're supposed to be wearing 5 pieces of clothing on a normal day-to-day basis as well when we go outside. And then there's a linguistic explanation of what the jilbab means. It's an outer sheet which covers a woman, and it's wrapped from the top of her clothes to cover herself from head to toe. So it hides the body completely. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at these 2 things, from one opinion is what's on your left. It's full from the top, it covers everything and it only uncovers one eye. And then your second opinion is like a jabbara, abaya, which is from the neckline, but then you obviously have your khimar. Next slide, please. Now, there was another ayah that we looked at as well. وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَ تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ الْأُولَى. Now, what does that mean, tabarruj? Now, in Arabic, if you look at the word tabarruj, it means to be apparent and appear openly before others. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that don't be apparent, don't appear openly before others. That's not only in your dress, but it's also in the way you display yourself, your behavior as well. Now, the Arabs use the word baraj for everything that is visible. So, for example, a burj, a tower, it's known as a burj because it's prominent, it's elevated, it's visible. So that's where the word tabarruj comes from. Now, when you're using the word tabarruj in respect of women, it would mean that she shows the charms of her face and body before people. So it's not only in what you show, it's also in your behavior. Or she displays the adornments of her dress and ornaments as in jewelry before others. So you show off your clothes, your dress, your jewelry. We're talking about non-mahrams over here. Or she makes herself visible and stand out by her manner of walking, figure, and flirtatious behavior. So that's what the tabarruj would mean. So Allah is saying that don't do any of these things. So Allah is saying that don't display your jewelry, display your body, your dress, etc., then attract women. Now, for women to walk out fully embellished, to make their face and figure conspicuous by adornments and tight-fitting or transparent dresses, and to walk in a flirtatious behavior, that is what tabarruj means. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is what people used to do before Islam. Now, if we start acting like that again, that means, remember, we are going back 1500 years. And this is what the women used to do, that they used to dress in such a way that they wanted to attract men, and they wanted the men to come up to them, etc. Now, these same things would apply on social media as well. So if you've got a social media account and you put pictures of yourself and you're doing tabarruj, then the same ayat would apply as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us not to do that. Next slide, please. Now let's look at some general principles of clothing. So now you know that there should be a khimar, there should be a jilbab, there should be no tabarruj, and also the jilbab should not be tight, it should be loose fitting, so you're not able to see the shape of the body. Another one is whatever you are wearing should not be a symbol of any other religion or faith. So for example, a Sikh turban or a necklace with a cross, or any clothing which is worn by a particular religion or faith, and not for pride or to show off. So for example, if you've got something designer and you're wearing it to show off to people, then that's not allowed. But if you're wearing it just because you like it, and you're intention is nowhere, it's nothing about showing off to people, then that is fine. And another thing about pride is some Muslim women do cover up properly, and that's very, very good. And obviously that is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we shouldn't become proud that, oh, look at her, she doesn't even cover herself and I do cover myself. Because remember, Allah could test us with the same. So we could be fully covered today and tomorrow we could have our hair out. And the person that we were looking down on, Allah could change their halat, that tomorrow they're fully covered. So if you do have the tawfiq of covering up fully and you don't find it difficult to do so, and you are able to do so, but that does not mean that we have reached the peak of piety, and that does not mean we're going Jannah as well. Because it could be that somebody who has their hair out prays all their salah, but the person who covers up doesn't pray salah, or the person who doesn't cover up properly is very nice and treats people properly, but the person who covers up doesn't treat people properly and then looks down on other people. So remember, we don't know what our situation is going to be like in 10 years time, in 5 years time, where we are going to be religiously, what we're going to be wearing as well. So if somebody does cover up properly, always thank Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us that tawfiq. And remember, it's a journey, it's a spiritual journey. Some people genuinely struggle with it and they try so hard. So they might just wear a scarf, but the amount that they have had to work on their nafs just to wear that scarf, most people wearing a niqab would not have had to wear that, have to do that much work on their nafs. So remember, Allah gives everybody a different test. Some people might find it really hard to pray salah, but really easy to cover up. Or some people might find it really hard to treat people well, but easy to cover up. Or it could be anything. So remember, everybody's test is different and it's a spiritual journey. Another one that we've looked at already, not wear clothes to attract the attention of men, that's tabarruj. Not thin and transparent as well, because then it defeats the purpose. Not wear clothing of the opposite gender. This is important as well, that something which is labeled for men, women shouldn't be wearing it. And not imitate the non-Muslims. So it might not be from their religion, but it is just their clothing. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Hadith, it says clearly, these are the garments of the non-Muslim, do not wear them. Now remember, that's a very important thing, because our clothing is our identity. That's how Muslims get identified. Now, I was reading something, well, several years ago. You might know about the tsunami that happened in Indonesia. We're going back a good 20 years. In that, so many people passed away. Now, the people who were burying, they said everybody that was wearing top and trousers, we just put them all in a mass grave with all the non-Muslims. We didn't, and the people who were dressed in an Islamic dress code, we put them in the graves in the Islamic way. So remember, we never know where we are going to be when we pass away. And if we're in a place which is so remote or not even remote, people will bury us from what they see of us. So if they see this person is not dressed as a Muslim, is probably not a Muslim, then they're going to treat us in that way. So we don't want it to be that our last moments or the way we're buried, the grave that we go in, na'udhu billah, is in with all the non-Muslims. So remember, it's a very, very big identity for us and it's very important. Next. Okay, I've got a few case studies. I want you to interact on this, and I want you to pop the answers or just your thoughts. It doesn't even have to be an answer, just your thoughts on the case study. Now, the first one is Salma likes to wear hoodies specifically made and sold for men because they are more comfortable. Loungewear. What's your opinion and what would you tell Salma? Just pop it down in the chat. These are quite unique, so seem okay to me. Now, if you look in the, Jazakallah for the message, but if you look in the case study, it says specifically made and sold for men. So it wasn't, this particular one that we're talking about is not unisex. Her intention is only comfort. Now, that's a good point that you've made. Remember, this is what a lot of people say. If somebody is doing something wrong, people like to use this, that the intention was right. But remember, a right intention does not make a wrong act correct. A wrong act is incorrect even with the right intention. Unfortunately, women's hoodies are quite tight fit where men's are oversized and modest. You could buy a bigger size. She can wear it, I think, for comfort, but not to imitate men. Wear alternatives for women. Yes, basically. So she should not be wearing it. If one of the rulings that we looked at was should not imitate the opposite gender. And there's quite a bit of that in the ruling of Sharia. So she should not be wearing it. She should wear the ones for men, even though intention is not to imitate men. She should wear the ones that are specifically made for women, wear something which is comfortable, which is more loose, etc. Okay, Jazakallah for the input on that. The next one is, Yasmin has a really nice, blingy, nicely shaped dress for a wedding. When she steps outside, she puts a big jabba on before leaving the house, as well as a khimar. What's your opinion on this? What would you say to her? Yep. Let's just say it's not tight. Let's just say it has a good shape, but it doesn't show her figure. Now, this is one part to remember, that Islam does not tell us that we can't have fun, we can't wear nice clothes, we can't enjoy ourselves. Absolutely, you can. So if Yasmin is going to a wedding where there are no men, and she knows that there's going to be no men as well, and when she steps outside, she's fully covered, and then she takes it off as soon as she gets to the wedding, then she's doing absolutely nothing wrong. And this is where some people might take it to another step, where they think that as long as you're outside or you're not in your home, you're not allowed to wear anything, and you must be really simple or dressed in a certain way. But if it's an all-female event where you know that there are going to be no males, then, and you're not uncovering your sitter, and you're not wearing a very, very tight dress so all the women can see your shape and everything, then it's absolutely fine to wear what I've described in that case study. Jazakallah for your input on that one. And let's look at the last one. Afifa wears a jilbab outside, but it's tight and it reveals her body shape. Would you consider this as hijab? Yep. No, it's not hijab. Because remember, this is another one that's quite frequent as well. You have to wear a jilbab, you have to wear a abaya. But remember, when we looked at the ayah, jilbab clearly meant a loose fitting garment. So it has to be loose fitting. Now, sometimes abayas that we wear are even more tight than our normal shalwar kameez that people wear on a everyday basis. So that would not be, what Afifa is wearing is not correct as well. And she should try to wear a loose fitting one. Okay, Jazakallah for your input on all three case studies. Next slide, please. Now let's look at general modest behavior. So remember, Islamic dress code is not only about what we wear, it's also about our behavior. Lower the gaze, we need to lower our gaze and avoid flirtatious speech and conduct. Avoid close physical contact with the opposite gender, obviously unrelated members. So don't get too close. Don't. Sometimes, obviously, we're going to talk about it later on. Muftiya Maryam is, but sometimes you need to out of darura, but nothing more than darura. Observing the modest or Islamic dress code according to the Quran and Sunnah. Now, another thing I wanted to point out is the Quran is very, very versatile. So when Allah SWT said khimar and jilbab, Allah used such words that no matter which part of the world that you are from, and no matter which era you are from as well, you'll be able to apply and do amal upon the word jilbab and amal upon the word khimar as well. So for example, the people from Iran, they'll be doing amal upon the word jilbab, but in a complete different way. And people, us all from the subcontinent, where of India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, we will do amal upon the word jilbab, but in a different way, but he'll still be doing amal upon it. And even khimar, some people might wear a burqa, some people may wear a dupatta. So again, in that way, is very, very versatile. So you're still keeping in line with your tradition, but then you're also applying the Islamic guidelines. We've already looked at tabarruj, not drawing unnecessary attention to oneself, and avoid wearing perfume or cosmetics in front of unrelated men. So that's modest behavior. Next slide, please. Now remember, hijab refers to the entire modest dress of a Muslim sister, that which screens her from the male gaze. It also refers to her behavior that screens her, such as lowering the gaze, guarding her modesty, not revealing her hidden adornments. Thus, all 7 of the commands in the 2 ayats concerning hijab that were mentioned right at the beginning. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's look at a case study. And I want you to put your input in the chat box, please. Khadija covers her body and face. Now let's just say loose, she wears a loose abaya. However, when she goes shopping or is in a car with a non-mahram, she'll stand very closely to him when she's out, have lots of perfume on, talk to him in a sweet voice. Would you consider this woman to be observing hijab? Put your reasons why as well. Hijab, but not the behavior part of the hijab. That's a good way to put it. And why isn't she doing the behavior part? Because it's standing close, wearing perfume, having a sweet voice, everything which attracts the opposite gender. Yeah, so physically so her clothing is displaying hijab, but not her behavior. So remember, it's not only about your clothing. You could be wearing a niqab, you could be wearing a loose jabba, you could be wearing a long dupatta or a khimar, but your behavior is very important as well. Jazakallah for your answers. Next slide, please. Now, we're going to look at the aura. So what we discussed up till now, it was primarily about going out. So I hope you understand. Remember 3 things: khimar, jilbab, and tabarruj. So we want a khimar, we want a jilbab, and we don't want tabarruj. Now let's look at the aura. What's the aura in front of different people? Aura basically, or your satar, are those parts of your body that need to be covered. So it's nothing to do with fitna or anything. They just need to be covered. So the first one is the aura of a free woman, i.e. not a slave, is her full body, except for your face, hands, and feet. So the full body needs to be covered in front of a non-mahram man, everything except your face, hands, and feet. And face, we're going to look at that later on. This is for the purpose of satar, for the purpose of aura. Now, the aura of a woman in front of another Muslim woman. So the aura of a woman in front of another Muslim woman is from the navel up to and including the knees. But obviously, that doesn't mean you sit there uncovered, that you can show everything else. Obviously, that's against haya and modesty. These are the minimum parts that need to be covered. Now, the aura of a woman in front of her mahram men is between the navel and the knees, and the stomach and the back. So the stomach and the back, not the chest area, and obviously that is for the reasons of maybe breastfeeding, etc. But again, this part is important, that it's permissible for a woman to expose the following parts of her body in front of a mahram: head, face, neck, chest, shoulders, hands, forearms, legs from below the knees, not the stomach, not the back, or any area which is between the navel and the knees. But it should be remembered that if there is a fear of fitna, then it's going to be impermissible. So if your mahram is going to look at you in the wrong way, or then that's not possible. Or even if there's just a fear that it will happen. Or touch as well. So when there's a fitna, then it's not allowed. And especially in today's day and age where society is very promiscuous, and we do have problems of incest or sexual assault within family members, etc., then precaution should always be taken. Because remember, this is a minimum, and it doesn't mean that we do amal upon the minimum. It's just there for concession. Next slide, please. Now let's look at between spouses. So in principle, for the spouses, you can look at any part of each other's body. There is no aura. But one thing to remember is that Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha said that she and Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never saw each other's private parts. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Even though there's no aura, there is still a bit of haya and modesty there. Now, what about, so that's between the spouses. What about when you're on your own? So even when you're on your own in the Hanafi school, you should cover between the navel and the knees. So even on your own, you should always cover the navel and the knees, between the navel and the knees. And remember, like I told you before, the malaika get embarrassed, they don't come in, and you don't, and shayateen then start coming in as well. So if you're going to sit there revealing yourself, it's going to attract the shayateen. And even another thing is, for example, taking so long in the shower or just sitting in the bath. Islamically, it doesn't follow the guidelines quite rightly, because we're told that number one, you shouldn't waste a lot of water, and number two, we shouldn't stay uncovered for long amounts of times, so for a very long time. So even in that, we should try to minimize the exposure. And the aura in front of non-mahram males is everything except for the face, hands, and feet. So that's the aura. And for in front of non-Muslim women, it's slightly different as well. The whole body besides the hands, face, and the feet. Now, the reason why we differentiate between Muslim women and non-Muslim women is because non-Muslim women, they don't have guidelines to follow. So it could be that they see your body and they might then go on to describe your body to to their friends, to their male friends, or to their male relatives. Or it could be that they look at you with temptation, and there could be fitna there, especially when we know that homosexuality is common these days. So because of those reasons, Islam has differentiated between Muslim women and non-Muslim women. Next slide, please. Now, this is just Ibarat text from Durrul Mukhtar, where it says there is a general obligation. It says the word obligation, even when alone, according to the correct opinion, unless it is for a valid reason, to cover one's aura, as in from the navel of the knees. Now, Question is, for example, sometimes there's darura, there's a need that you need to uncover your aura. So when there's a need, we will allow it. So for example, you need surgery or the doctor needs to see a certain area, then we're going to allow that, but that doesn't mean you uncover everything. You only uncover which part needs to be seen. So if it's a certain part of the leg, then you're not going to take your full trousers off and show to the doctor. You could just roll your trousers up from the bottom. So again, that would depend on the darura and the need, and you may have to ask a mufti specifically what is allowed in that situation and what is not allowed. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at a case study. A Mara wears a normal swimming costume in a ladies only pool where non-Muslim women also attend. I mean, when I say normal swimming costume, I mean the one where the legs are exposed, etc. What would you say to her and why? Please put it in the chat box. Muslim women are present, the aura is everything except for the hands, feet, and face. Now, if you're wearing a normal swimming costume, then all the legs are exposed, which a non-Muslim woman can't see, and even a Muslim woman can't, because the aura is up till the knees. Now, let's look at the next case study. Maryam likes to have her hair out and wear jeggings at home where there are only mahrams. When she leaves, she wears a jilbab and abaya which is open and throws a dupatta on which slips off sometimes. What would you say to Maryam? Two scenarios I want you to look at, the part at home and the part outside. Let's look at it, let's break it up. Maryam likes to leave her hair out. Now it's at home. Leaving your hair out at home, from a fiqh perspective, permissible. From, if you're going to look at it from the other perspective of angels being present and everything, and just having that extra bit of haya and everything, then maybe just put something on, even if it's just a turban there, then it would be better. Wear jeggings at home. Okay. If you're wearing jeggings and you're wearing a top, then your private area and all the area up till your knees, that is going to be visible. And even in front of mahrams, that should not be, even though you can't see, it's going to be really, really tight. So you can see all the shape and everything of it. So that is not correct. Okay, if you're wearing something which is long and it covers that area, so your top is long, your kurta is long, then you can get away with it and you can say it's fine. So you would say it's okay. Now, when she leaves, she wears a jilbab, which is open. Now, if you've got an open jilbab, an open jabba, an open abaya, you're not covering much. The jeggings will be really tight. Will be showing all the shape, so that will not be allowed. And a khimar, which slips off sometimes, that is not good as well, because it's defeating the purpose. So that's not, Maryam is not following the Islamic dress code. Jazakallah for your input on that one as well. Next. Now let's just quickly look at the clothing of the Sahabiyat. Hazrat Urwa narrated that Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha said that the messenger of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray Fajr, and the Muslim women would attend wrapped in their aprons. That's talking about the jilbab. Then they would go back to their houses and nobody would recognize them. So they used to wear jilbabs and they were dark in color. That's why they used to get camouflaged in the dark and nobody would be able to recognize them. So from that, we know that the Sahabiyat used to wear dark colored jilbabs. The next one is Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha narrated that the wife of Rifa al-Qurazi radiallahu anha came to Allah's Messenger Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam whilst I was sitting, and she was showing the fringe of her jilbab. So again, proof there that the women, when they used to go outside, they used to wear a jilbab. As Aisha narrated, the faithful women, as in the mu'mineen, wrapped in their murut, that was their jilbabs, used to attend the Fajr prayer with Allah's Messenger, and after finishing the prayer, they would return to their homes and nobody could recognize them because of the darkness, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So again, they used to get camouflage, so that tells us that their clothing was of dark color. Now this one is Hazrat Asma binti Abi Bakr. She came to the house of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she was wearing a thin garment. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "O Asma, when a woman reaches the age of maturity, it is not proper for her to show anything but this and this." And he pointed to his face and hands. So he was trying to tell her that the thin garment that you've got on is not covering your aura, and everything should be covered properly. And from that, it tells us that we're not supposed to be wearing anything thin, transparent, and see-through. Next, please. May Allah, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha narrated that may Allah have mercy on the early Muhajirat. When the verse was revealed that they should extend their head coverings to cover their chest area, they tore their murut and used this as a khimar. So now this was a sahabiyat, like I was telling you at the beginning, that whenever a hukam came down, whenever a ruling came down, they'd practice upon it straight away. So as soon as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told them that the head covering that you're wearing is not sufficient, they tore their pieces of clothing up and then they started wearing that as a long khimar. Now, when you look at these ahadiths, you'll see a few ahadith which have the word murut in it. Now, murut is a plural for mirt, and mirt is a sheet that is wrapped around the body and closed in front. So it was basically a type of jilbab. So wherever you see the word murut in our hadith, it's referring to the jilbab. Next, please. Now, the niqab. So up till now, you know that we have to wear khimar, we have to wear jilbab. There should be no flirtatious behavior. And you also know that everything is satar except for the face, hands, and feet. So now the big question is, do you cover the face if it is not satar? Because you know that satar has to be covered. The niqab, as some people say, it's a traditional item, but it really is not a traditional garment. It's not a cultural garment. It's definitely religious. As we know from one of the opinions of what a jilbab is. Now, this is the opinion of the Ahnaf and most of the ulama, that it's wajib to cover the face for a woman besides old women. Really old women who no longer want to get married and there's no fear of fitna, then they don't have to cover. Now, it clearly says in one of the books of fiqh for the Ahnaf that a young woman will be prevented from exposing her face, not because it is part of aura, rather for the fear of temptation. So if somebody says, oh, the face is not even satar, so we don't have to cover it. But remember, we're not covering the face because it is satar, but we're covering because of temptation. And we know that because of today's day and age and the immoral nature of people, and there's a really big risk of fitna, the ulama do say that it is compulsory to cover the face. Now, there's a second opinion that the niqab to cover the face is not wajib, but it's recommended. And a woman must only cover her aura in public. And they have their reasons, but the biggest reason is because it's not part of the aura. Now, according to the people who say that you have to cover your face, they do sometimes give concession that you can remove your niqab, your face covering, when there's a haja, when there's a genuine need. For example, sometimes when you go to the airport for identification, or if there's going to be, you have fear of physical harm or extreme verbal abuse, and you fear that if you don't take it off, then you'll be harmed, then you are allowed to. So there is concession there, but obviously when there's real darura and haja. Next slide, please. Now, let's look at the evidence of where does the niqab actually come from, and did the Sahabiyat wear it? Now, it says that the first one it says is Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha used to say, when these words were revealed, and to draw their veils all over their juyubihinna, the Sahabiyat took their izar, which is a long sheet of cloth, tore them from the edges and covered their faces with them. So when the ayah was revealed, the Sahabiyat didn't used to cover their faces before, but then they started covering them. And then we've got another hadith as well, where Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha said that the riders used to pass by us when we were with Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in ihram. So when they were traveling in the desert, they used to lift their niqab up. And when they would draw near to us, we would lower our jilbabs from our heads over our faces. Then when they had passed, we would uncover them again. So again, this clearly tells us that the Sahabiyat, they did used to cover their face. They used to cover their faces in front of non-mahrams. And then another hadith where he says the Prophet ﷺ would order the young girls, the older women, those of hijab, and the women menstruating to attend the two Eids. One of them said, "O Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what if she does not have a jilbab?" So Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to tell the women, you can come out for Eid prayer. But because the Sahabiyat were so poor, they didn't want to come out because they didn't have enough clothing, they didn't have a jilbab. So Prophet ﷺ said, then let her sister lend her a jilbab, that borrow a jilbab of someone and then come outside. And then this is the last hadith as well, where Hazrat Asma binti Abi Bakr radiallahu anha said, we used to cover our faces in front of men. So from the hadith, we do understand that the Sahabiyat did used to, and it was encouraged to wear the niqab. Okay, let's look at a few common questions. Are jeans permissible to wear? So we're looking at jeans, leggings, jeggings, the same ruling applies. In principle, yes, on the condition that it's not in front of non-mahram. When it's in front of mahram, again, the same ruling applies, that from your navel to your knees, make sure you've got your whatever you're wearing, your dress or top or whatever it is long enough to go up till your knees so that they can't see the shape of your legs. Again, taqwa and haya would be, you'll find in lots of fatwas where it would be recommended that don't wear it. That's from a more taqwa perspective. Can I wear top and trousers at home? Okay, top and trousers at home when you're alone, again, it's fine in principle. But if there's mahrams, even women, the same would apply. From your navel to your knees, make sure the shape of your legs and everything cannot be seen. But again, it's against haya and modesty, which should still be adopted because the angels frequent the house. And even if the angels don't frequent the house, it's just a part of faith. Now, another one that we had on the group the other day was, can we wear a sari? Now, that was answered with detail on the group, but the answer was that a sari, if you look into it properly and deeply, it does have connection with the Hindu religion. And I did cite some references for that. So the ruling that the ulama give is, if you come from an area where the sari is worn exclusively and specifically by non-Muslim women, and the Muslim women of the area do not wear the sari, then it won't be allowed, because for you, you'll be imitating them. Now that is in parts of Pakistan, parts of India, but if you come from an area where the sari is not a religious piece of clothing, but it's even worn by the Muslim women, and it always has. So the Muslim women of that area and the Hindu women of that area wear it. Then for you, even though you may be living in UK, but because you originate from that area, you would be allowed to wear it, on the condition that all the other rules of wearing of Islamic clothing are fulfilled, that it's not tight, no satar is revealed, it's not transparent, etc. And that's the end of my part. Jazakallah for listening. And if you do have any questions, please do make a note of them, and inshallah they'll be answered at the end.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah for everyone to joining the webinar, and we're on to the second part, which is laws on interaction. Okay, so we're going to touch on who are mahrams of women specifically. So mahrams are those individuals who you are forbidden to marry. So if you look at the chart in the middle, we have the female, and then we have father, grandfather, great-grandfather, sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons. On the right-hand side, we have the father-in-law, stepsons, brothers, nephews, stepfather, half-brothers, and son-in-law. And then on the left-hand side, sorry, that was on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, we have foster brothers, foster nephews, foster father. These refer to the brothers, nephews, and father that are related through milk kinship. So rida, basically. And then underneath that, we have paternal uncles, maternal uncles, and foster uncles. So all these individuals are mahrams to the female. And Abba Sajda has mentioned previously what parts of the aura and what parts of hijab you need to observe in front of these mahrams. Moving on. So where do interactions occur and with whom? So interactions can occur between male to male, female to female, and then female to male. Specifically in this webinar, we will be focusing on female to male interaction. Interactions can occur at home. So, you know, basic interactions with anybody who is in your house, or maybe non-mahrams are in your house, work, medical reasons, and everyday environment. Moving on. So evidence from the hadith regarding interactions. So home interaction. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Let no man from now on visit a woman whose husband is absent, except when he has one or two other men." So here the Prophet ﷺ has specified that no woman should be alone with another man, except when the man has brought another man with him, or somebody else is in that environment with them both. Now, this is to reduce temptation, to reduce fitna. Medical interaction. Hazrat Anas radiallahu anhu narrates that on the day of the Battle of Uhud, I saw Aisha bint Abu Bakr and Hazrat Sulaim, may Allah be pleased with them. Verily, they were both lifting up their garments such that I could see the anklets on their legs while they were carrying water vessels on their backs, emptying them in their mouths and returning to fill them up, then coming to empty them in the people's mouths. So it's really important to remember here that the Sahabiyats were involved in medical reasons with the Sahabas, but they did not touch any part of the Sahaba's body. Rather, they were there just to fill their mouths up with water so they could get ready back on the battlefield. And it's also important to remember here that the Sahabiyats were not wearing anklets that had bells on them, which could attract attention. Obviously, wearing anklets that have bells on them are not permissible to wear. Moving on. Interaction influences. So there are certain influences of interaction. Abba Sajda has mentioned these before. The first one we're going to focus on is gaze, because this is where the first interaction starts with somebody. Tell the believing men to reduce some of their vision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed this ayat because when you interact with somebody, first of all, the first thing you do is you meet their eye. So this is why Allah has mentioned gaze first, so that when the gaze is cut out from the influencer, no other problem can occur after that. So Allah has mentioned the gaze first before the private areas, as some ulama have stated that the gaze is a pioneer to the heart. So when you gaze at somebody, when you're looking at somebody, the first part is when you're thinking of them with temptation, with influence. You're looking at them with the gaze of zina in your eye. So that is why Allah has mentioned gaze first, to cut that problem out first. The gaze should be lowered from those individuals who are not permissible for us, so non-mahrams. The aura should not be looked at whether coincidental or with a desired look, although from this ayah we derive rulings of uncovering the aura for medical reasons. So similarly, if you're a doctor or you're working as a nurse in a hospital and you're required to look at a patient, the aura of a patient, so something between the navel and the knees, then in this case it is permissible to look and to treat the area, so long as you're not looking at it with temptation and you're only looking at the necessary area and for a certain required amount of time. So you're not looking at it more than you need to. Moving on. So we have an example here. A female optometrist is testing the eyes of a patient. A working environment, example in opticians, you require face-to-face interactions with patients. Therefore, it is permissible for her to continue her job so long as she observes the conditions of modesty and professionalism. And when you're working as an optometrist, or you're working in a pharmacy, or you're working in a doctor's surgery, you're required to have face-to-face interactions with patients, as that's part of your job. So it's permissible for you to continue working your job so long as you're dressing modestly and you maintain a level of professionalism within yourself. So you're not over excessively talking when you don't need to, or you're not talking in a sweet or a flirtatious kind of way with the patient. These also cross the boundaries of professionalism and come into the boundaries of misconduct as a working practitioner in that environment. So it's important to only keep the interaction to a minimum and when you need to. So we have is there a case study before that, Ustaz? That's fine. Okay, so moving on to conduct, which is another influence. So we have modesty is from faith. This is mentioned in Mirqat al-Mafatih, and Apas has also commented on this as well before, that modesty is a part of faith, it's a part of Islam, is who we are as Muslims. Modesty do not bring anything except goodness. When you're modesty, when you're shy, when you have bashfulness in you, this does not bring anything except goodness, because it takes out any problems. It cuts the problem from the root. And when you conserve yourself, you preserve yourself as well. You're not drawing any attention to yourself. Being modest is a part of Islam itself. It refers to fairness in dealing with Islamic matters and justice in rulings, following etiquette and the conditions of Sharia. So as mentioned before, the guidelines that Sharia has placed in Islam is to help preserve modesty, to preserve shyness within women, and similarly within men as well. Modesty is not just for women to observe. It's the same rulings apply to men as well. They have rulings and guidelines that they need to follow about their aura. Present yourself with modesty inside and outside the home. Apas has mentioned before that being modest outside the home and inside the home follow similar rulings. When inside the home, observing hijab, keeping your interactions to a minimum with non-mahrams. Refrain from excessive intermixing without need. So this again applies to when you're outside in a working environment or in an everyday environment with anybody. If you're out shopping or, you're doing something outside, refrain from excessive intermixing with non-mahrams specifically when you don't need to. And if there is a need to mix with them, keep it to a minimum. Preserve your modesty in the way you dress, speak, and conduct yourself. Now, being a Muslim is an identity that we hold, holding the identity of a Muslimah, and it reflects who we are in ourselves. So the way we speak, the way you conduct yourself, and the way you dress, these are all identities of a Muslim. And we have specific guidelines in Sharia that teach us how to conduct ourselves, how to speak, and how to dress as well. So we have a case study here. A woman is required to work due to family circumstances. She finds a job in an office environment and has frequent interactions with males. She befriends a male colleagues whom she works with. How would you advise to ensure modesty, and should she leave her job and find a female-only environment? So I'm going to open up the chat box here if anybody would like to contribute. How would you advise to ensure modesty? So just type your answers in the chat box. With her way of speaking, with her way of talk, with the way she interacts, and how she holds her Muslim identity. in that environment. Should she leave her job and find a female-only environment? If possible, yes. Preferably, if possible, if she can. Yes, so those answers follow similar guidelines. So if she can find a female-only environment, she should. It's best for her. But if she is unable to, and she's still required to work in the same environment, then it is permissible for her to continue working so long as she ensures modesty and she keeps her interactions to a minimum. Now, there's a difference between being overly friendly and keeping it professional. If she befriends him, she should ensure that it's not to an excessive level. She's not talking to him when she doesn't need to. And she is also, not going out with him or to lunch or anything like that. And she also keeps her manners and her talking with him to a minimum. So there's a difference between being professional, being nice, and being overly nice and being overly, that comes into the boundaries of being overly flirtatious, or it sort of puts temptation into the heart where she thinks, oh no, I'm just his friend, but then that progresses into something else. So when working in environments like these, you should be very careful of how you perceive something. As long as she keeps by that and doesn't befriend ex-talking except professional, exactly. So as long as she keeps to how she is when she ensures modesty and she keeps the interaction to a minimum, and only when she is required, that's when she interacts with him. Moving on. So a female works in a pharmacy and she has a male manager. It is permissible. So we have an example here. So she works in a pharmacy and she has a male manager. It is permissible for her to continue working in this environment so long as she maintains professionalism and modesty, keeping interactions with her manager to a minimum, modest and professional. So here we have the example here of a female where she works in a pharmacy. She has interactions with males. So it's allowed for her to continue working in this environment so long as her interactions with the manager are at a minimum, modest, professional level. She doesn't over excessively befriend him or talk to him when she doesn't need to. Okay, so we have communication here. Do not be soft in speech to men, lest he in whose heart is disease should cover, but speak with appropriate speech. So again, this is referring to speaking in a flirtatious manner, speaking in a sweet voice where you're attracting and you're putting temptation into the heart of the opposite gender. Speak in a normal voice where you're not putting temptations into hearts. You're not intentionally having that, oh, if I speak in this manner, he's going to find me attractive. Speak in your normal voice and keep it simple. Disease refers to any doubt, hypocrisy, or bad intentions. Lowering your voice indicates modesty and bashfulness. Refrain from speaking in a flirtatious way using obscene language, so such as swearing maybe. And do not excessively joke or be indecent. So when joking or being indecent, these then open up the doors to fitna, and you let your guard down slowly when you're joking or you're being indecent, because that talk that used to be at a professional level, it then crosses the boundaries into where your guard basically becomes down and you think, oh, it's okay just to joke, or I'll have that one more laugh with that person. It then crosses the boundaries, and doors of fitna then become open due to excessively joking or being indecent or speaking in a flirtatious way. It's all about how you hold yourself, how you communicate yourself as well. So we have an example. We've already covered this example. So again, keeping the interactions to a minimum and modest professional level as well. So we have a case study here. A female student attends university and befriends a male student on her course. They are paired in a group to complete a project. Eventually, they become less cautious around each other and begin to laugh and joke. They spend less time with the rest of the group and more time alone together. So looking at the first question, is this permissible? Type your answers in the chat box, please. What advice would you give to both students? So what would you tell both students? feel free to type your answers in the chat box. Inshallah. Keep their interactions to a minimum. Better to stay in large groups as there's a fear of temptation, keep a distance, it'll cause more problems with family, etc. If family do get involved afterwards. To remain in the group, stick to boundaries or join different groups now. Shaitan is present. Yeah, so some really good ideas we've got on the chat box. So what advice would you give to both students? Tell them first to be cautious of Allah, even though there's nobody around them, there's just them to be cautious, though Allah is looking, and just have that fear of Allah in them, and have modesty, have bashfulness between each other. When you open the boundaries of laughing and joking, that haya comes down. Haya comes down a level where you think, oh, it's okay just to carry on with this. I don't feel any shame in laughing with him or joking with him, it's fine. And again, there's nothing wrong with being paired in a group to complete a project, but it's when you come out of the boundaries of the group and then you think, oh, I'll just work with him by myself. And that's when temptation is there. Remember the reason you are in university for. Ask if they can work independently or be assigned to a female partner. Yes, they don't need to befriend each other. Exactly. So within a group, they should complete the project as a group. Moving on. So the laws of segregation. Khalwa. So khalwa involves the complete seclusion of the male and female together without any restrictions or conditions. So restrictions or conditions meaning, i.e. this is like a mahram present, or they are not in a medical environment, they are by themselves together, they don't need medical intervention, there's no doctor or patient present. When interacting with the opposite gender, it is essential that certain conditions are met to minimize khalwa. So when you're interacting like a male to female patient, then it's essential that certain conditions are met to minimize khalwa. So certain conditions such as observing modesty, having a third person present, keeping the interaction to a minimum where you're only looking at a required area, or you're not talking excessively when you don't need to. So minimizing the khalwa there. Complete what needs to be done and refrain from extending the interaction when not required. Do not put yourself in such a situation that you feel you may be accused of misconduct. So example, when you're alone with a patient and you fear that somebody might accuse something or you did something, having a third person there, it covers your back. When working, you have a professional code of conduct and ethics to follow. So if you're working in a professional environment, you have a code of conduct, you have a code of ethics to follow as a practitioner, as a working professional. And when you cross those boundaries, that's when you've crossed the boundaries into the misconduct there. So therefore, you have crossed the boundaries and you're no longer following the code of ethics or the code of conduct that you've signed before when starting the job. So these code of ethics and conducts are present in professional working environments to make sure that interactions are kept to a certain level, are kept to a minimum. And boundaries are not crossed when they don't need to. Moving on. So how to minimize khalwa? Refrain from excessive laughing, talking, and joking. Dress modestly, keep physical contact to a minimum. So again, when working in professional environments such as doctor-patient, only look at the area that you need to. If you're working as an optometrist, only look at the area that you need to. Don't be excessive and look at other areas when there's no need. Control the gaze and avoid staring. As mentioned before, the gaze is the pioneer to the heart. It all starts with a simple look or a simple gaze of temptation. Keep doors or blinds open. So when you're in a secluded area, try to keep the inside of the room visible so people can see that there's nothing going on in there. So keep doors or blinds open, have a third person present, behave in a professional and responsible manner, make the inside of the room visible. Moving on. An example. A female teacher works alongside a male teaching assistant. She has clear windows in her class and a wall of windows which are unable to be covered. These make her classroom visible to anyone passing by. There are also cameras in her classroom which are monitored. It is permissible for her to work in this type of environment as she has clear conditions that hinder complete seclusion between herself and the TA. So number one, she has clear windows in her classroom which anybody can see in and out of. She's got a wall of windows which are unable to be covered. So again, anybody passing by, they're able to see inside the classroom. She can see out of it as well. And if there is a need where, if there is no wall of windows, if the blinds or windows need to be covered, she also has cameras in her classroom which hinder complete seclusion between her and the TA themselves. So they're never alone together because the cameras are always monitoring everything. Moving on. Online interactions. So online interactions generally follow similar rulings to face-to-face interactions. Contact with the opposite gender should be kept at a minimum. So again, if you have social media apps, contact with males should be kept at a minimum. Private messages, calling, direct messaging is considered along the lines of secluded face-to-face interactions. Certain conditions are required to be met. So example, if you have a male calling you and you don't know them or they messaged you, you don't need to befriend them, you don't need to reply back to their messages, you completely block them, because this is an example as if you were face-to-face and they come up to you. If you don't know them, there's no need to talk. So there's no need to talk again in online interactions or on social media. So certain conditions are required to be met. Example, if you have a need where you need to message somebody for something, or you need to message like an alim for something, privately messaging them, but as long as you keep the question or the interaction to a minimum and you only ask them what is needed to be asked, you don't go further than that. Unfamiliar people, males or females who have befriended you, can become a pathway to fitna as they continue to have access to your personal profile and your attention, hence always take precaution. So as Abbas Sajda mentioned before, that social media is a pathway to fitna because it opens the doors of fitna, and you are able to post your pictures, you are able to befriend people, and they have access to your personal profile, the pictures that you post, and your attention. Your attention becomes so secluded on your social media that you don't see anything else around you. That's why it's always best to take precaution on social media. Social media can create more harm than good depending on the way you use it. So as long as if you're using social media to advertise a business, or if you're using it because you have a group set up where people can ask you questions, like a fatawa group, then this is a social media for a good reason. You're using it not for ill intentions. But if you've got it on the way where you just want to post your pictures and you want to advertise, unlawful things to people, then you're not using social media in a responsible and a good way. Use it responsibly and don't become influenced by the thought that no one can see you. If there is no need, then avoid it altogether. So even if you think somebody's directly messaging you, your parents can't see or your siblings can't see, always remember Allah can see everything. So you can't hide anything, even though it's on your phone and it's not a public viewing. If there's no need, then avoid it altogether. So if you don't need to use social media for any specific reason, you're just using it just to post things or, as a time pass, then avoid it altogether. You don't need to use it, because it's just, quite frankly to say, it's just a waste of time if you don't need it. In my final year of university, in my psychology and counselling degree, I'm required to make a survey and then distribute it. And my research question for that is looking at the relationship between social isolation and social media use. In the previous lectures, there'd been a lot of connection between mental health problems and social media use. It's a continuous cycle of using social media and mental health problems that emerge from it. If you're looking at social media, you see this perfect image, this perfect life that you think, oh, I can never have that. And you see these perfect people that have these lives, and you in your heart, you start to feel jealous. You start to think, oh, I can't have that. And everything in your own life, you start to disrespect it. You don't have the value of the things in your own life. And that becomes to the point where you start to seclude yourself from your own life. You start to seclude yourself from people around you. And you start to isolate yourself because you don't feel that your life is perfect as the lives you see on social media. But really, they are imperfect lives themselves that you see. And you're just giving your attention to those lives and you're not living your own life yourself. So because you're secluding yourself, obviously it brings into the play mental illnesses, mental health issues of depression, where you're secluding yourself, or anxiety because you don't feel you can go outside and show people the real you, or interact with others, because you feel that your life's not perfect and you're just living in this bubble of a social media world, a social media life that you can feel you can never achieve. So that then brings you down more, and it instigates more mental health issues and mental health problems. Moving on. So we have an example here. A male individual was directly messaged by a female. She started the conversation by mentioning that she had liked all his photos and showed interest in him. He mentioned that he was not interested in starting a haram relationship and blocked her immediately after. So in this example, this can work either way as well. So a male individual, you can have a female individual, somebody's messaged them and they've liked all their photos, showing interest in him. What he has done here, this male individual, he has done the right thing here, where he's immediately stated that he's not interested in a haram relationship and he's blocked her immediately after. So he hasn't continued this temptation that she has with him, and he's immediately blocked her, so he has no contact with her afterwards. Moving on. Is this permissible? A female was added by a male colleague on WhatsApp for the purpose of discussing work-related matters. Soon after, he began to message her regarding personal details about herself. She also began to respond to his messages and often had lengthy conversations with him, not work-related. Is this permissible? Feel free to type your answers into the chat box. Having lengthy conversations, like talking khalwa, should have kept it to a professional level. They're going beyond what's necessary in a secluded online space. Going towards a family relationship. Yes, so we've got some good answers here. So it is not permissible for her and for him as well to continue this, because number one, the work-related matters has just gone out the window and they're starting to talk about personal details about themselves. And they're often having lengthy conversations, not work-related. It's developed into a personal relationship, exactly. And eventually this will open the doors of a haram relationship, because they're thinking that instead of having this relationship online, we'll have it face-to-face or in person. Moving on. Excessive interaction. So excessive interaction can cause fitna and open the doors to haram relationships, exactly what we discussed. When interactions happen online, they eventually become interactions face-to-face. People are not satisfied with online interaction, they want more than that. You become dissatisfied in your own life and personal relationships, as whomsoever you interact with becomes more attractive in your eyes. So you become dissatisfied in your own life. You look at your own life and you don't feel fulfilled with it. You want to look for something else that attracts your eye. You can become mindful of yourself, but you are not in control of other people's thoughts and intentions. So even though you keep yourself in check and you become mindful of how you present yourself, you're not in control of how other people think about you or how other people feel as well. So it's really important that you're constantly rechecking yourself as well, just to make sure that you're not gathering temptation or people are not tempted towards you. And it can also decrease modesty as well. As I said before, have excessive joking or talking or laughing, you think what's wrong with that, and you don't feel anything wrong with it. So again, as the hadith mentioned, that if you don't have modesty, then do as you wish, when you don't think anything bad of what you're talking about or how you're behaving. So we have common questions and answers. Can a female teacher have boys as her students? Yes, until they reach the age of puberty, which is until they become baligh. So once after they become baligh, it's not permissible for her to continue teaching the boys. They should be sent to a madrasa which has male teachers. And these are just some references for Islamic dress code. And the references for the laws of interaction slides.
Okay, should I just pick any of them out, Mufti Sahib, anyone?
Just go in order,
Okay,
or whichever one.
okay, the first one that I have over here is, what swimming and exercise clothes are best to wear around other Muslim women? Now, the best would be something which covers all of your satr, something which is loose, so even like a long top, and even if your trousers should be loose as well, so that they don't stick to you and then show the shape. Now, I know there's burkinis out there, but you may notice that with some of them, once you go into the water, they stick to your body, and then it really shows all the shape as well. So anything that is modest, covers you properly, and is loose. Is that okay, Mufti Sahib?
Yeah, that's fine. Maryam?
So the second question says, what types of clothes would be suitable to wear in a women's only gym and do exercise in the steam room / sauna? So that question has already been answered by Absajda. So something that's loose fitting, something that covers all of you, and something that's modest.
Okay, the next question is, how should we cover our hair inside the home to maintain that modesty whilst angels are in our presence? Would you be allowed to just throw on a hijab? Yeah, that's fine. Even if you just put a hijab on, put a turban on, as long as there's no non-mahrams there, put even a topi on, as long as it's covered most of it, that is fine. Apa Maryam?
As mentioned by someone else, these labels are sometimes just a marketing strategy. So something may be labeled as men's, but if anything, it is more modest and more on the lines of being unisex, sometimes even more females due to the colours. Would this be fine? Absajda, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, it is a marketing strategy, but at the end of the day, it's sold for men, and it's going to be sewn or made in a way that it is for men. Now, if we were to start saying, okay, these clothes which are labeled for men, they're okay to wear for women, and these are not, then it's going to get very, very confusing. Then what we'd have to do is go through every single piece of clothing, and it goes against the rules of Sharia as well. So to keep it really simple and to the point, if it's for men, made for men, labeled for men, sold for men in the men's section, we don't touch it. And obviously they're going to be more modest when put on a woman's body, because a male's body is very different to a woman's body. So obviously they are going to be bigger and everything. So we're just not going to go to those areas and just leave them, even though it might just be a marketing strategy. If it is a marketing strategy, you're going to most probably find the same clothing item in the female section with a female label. So just wear that.
So the next question, someone I know teaches sixth form science and looking for a job. The girls' school does not have any job available. The sister's school, which is a boys' school, have offered that she can teach there with a parda as she wears a parda. Please can you advise as to whether it is okay to take on the job? Teacher would have her own classroom to teach in. She wants to teach but unsure if displeasing Allah. So the bottom line for this is, if she's required to teach, family circumstances where she actually needs to go out and look for a job, and this is the only job available, she has searched and there is no other girls' school that doesn't have a job available, it would be permissible for her to teach in this boys' school, required with certain conditions, that she observes parda, she teaches what she needs to teach, and she doesn't go excessively over that. She keeps her professional conduct. And if a job does come where she finds a girls' school that is looking for jobs, she should preferably take that job on and leave this current job. Absajda?
Just 1 minute. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a problem here. I think the next question was about the aura for a male in front of another male. Am I correct? Yeah. So that one is from the navel up till and including the knees. So for men in front of other men, it's from the navel up to and including the knees.
Okay, the next question has already been answered. What's the aura for men in front of mahrams, aura for men in front of other men? That's also been answered. How should we acknowledge somebody of the opposite gender without crossing boundaries? Example, a delivery man if needed, wondering because we're not supposed to say salam. So wherever you need to do, whatever's required, if you need to take a parcel off him or you need to sign something, just do that. But if you don't need to talk or you don't need to excessively interact with them, just leave it at that. If you're going to acknowledge them, if you want to say salam, that's it. Don't say salam or don't talk to them with temptation or, again, observing the rules of modesty, speak in a normal voice, observe your hijab, your parda, and don't cross boundaries with them when you don't need to. So keep the interaction to a minimum level when you can, and that's whoever you're interacting with, males especially.
The next question, would it be permissible to wear sweatpants and a long sleeve top in front of women and male mahrams? Yeah, that's fine. As long as it's not showing your figure or anything, then it's absolutely fine. Okay, next question, what advice would you give to someone who covers themselves outdoors but really struggles at home due to constantly feeling hot and excessive sweating? She just about manages to feel comfortable in a short sleeve maxi dress. Anything more is a struggle. Okay, that is absolutely fine. If there are no non-mahrams around, then that would be fine to wear as well. Mariam, are you doing the next one or?
I think it refers to your slides.
Okay. The Sari question is, I understand for people in the UK, they are being asked to refer back to what their norms are for their grandparents. I may have mentioned, but we do not focus on the urf in the specific. Okay. Over here, if you were to look at the urf in the UK, then it would be fully non-permissible, because in the UK, Muslim women don't wear saris at all. So if we're going to look at it from, well, majority, if we're going to look at it from that perspective, it's going to become very, very stringent. That's why our urf, even though we do live in our UK, but remember, a lot of our traditions and the way we live our life is actually based from what our parents and grandparents have brought from back home from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. So our urf is not only what is in the UK, that is not only our lifestyle. Our lifestyle has a lot of inclusions from those areas. That's why we do take those into generations. Now, if you were to look at it a few years, a few hundred years, a few hundred years later, then obviously it wouldn't make sense, because most probably there might not be any ta'alluq or any connection there. But for us, our urf is still a mix from my understanding, unless you've totally and completely, you're not adopting anything from back home and you live a complete different lifestyle, then obviously it would apply to you. And then if you were to follow those rules, then we would say wearing the sari is not permissible.
So the next question, is it permissible to give salam to non-mahrams? So it is permissible to give salam so long as you don't have any ill intentions, and you're observing the boundaries of modesty, whether so forth, so on. Is it permissible to wear leggings in front of your spouse? It is permissible to wear leggings in front of your spouse, because they are your spouse, they are your mahrams.
Okay, the next question says, regarding the modest clothing protecting a woman from prying eyes, one may say that there has been reported cases where fully clothed women in modest clothing who have been sexually assaulted. How do we respond to that? Okay, I have a question for that. A house which is fully locked, has CCTV cameras, everything, it's been burgled. How would you respond to them? Would you say to them, take your CCTV cameras off, don't lock your doors, open your windows and leave everything out in the open? So just because we've taken precautions, it does not mean it's not going to happen. It's life, it does happen. It doesn't mean that this action will never ever take place. It just means that we're lowering the chances of it taking place. And even if you don't want to look at it from that perspective, and we just look at it from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to do this, I will do that. So even if it doesn't help, but Allah definitely says in the Quran Sharif that it does help. So we know that it is going to help, but it doesn't mean it's going to completely eradicate the problem. And regarding wearing the hijab within the house, from a health perspective, would that not cause the hair to damage? Yeah, it probably does, but again, you can take it off. It's not a necessity, it's not a requirement, it's not an obligation. Just do what is good for you, and you know your hair and what your hair needs. So from whenever you need to take it off, then take it off. And also regarding covering the hair indoors, is it true that the sunnah of covering whilst eating is for both men and women. As far as I am aware, is for both men and women. There are girls who cover but openly show a character that is so immodest, using foul language, sinning openly, and so on. Whilst there are girls who have a beautiful character and inner modesty where they don't observe the hijab. How do we encourage non-hijabis when they bring forth this comparison? Again, you can just, again, I'm sure I said this in the presentation as well, that it doesn't mean that if you've covered up, reached the levels of piety or the highest level of piety. It's a work in progress for both. So people who have good character but are not covering up, just tell them the benefits. Tell them Allah loves you, you're precious to Allah. That's why Allah wants you to cover up. You'll get closer to Him. There'll be so many benefits for you. And just slowly encourage them and just tell them the benefits, tell them of the thawab that and the goodness that it brings, and obviously make dua.
So the next question is, if no mahram, do you still have to cover in the house? Upstairs has already covered this. How can we wear jackets, coats above the abaya and jilbab dupatta? Is it required to wear dupatta over the coat jacket as long as the coat is loose? So you can wear jackets and coats above the abaya as long as they're loose, they're not tight fitting. And if you, when wearing the dupatta over the coat or jacket, you can just take your scarf out of your coat, and then so when you zip up your coat or you button up your coat, the dupatta is obviously on top of that as well. So you're covering your chest area more.
Okay, the next question is regarding the swimming clothes. Some pools don't allow loose fitting clothes. What should we do? They allow burkinis. I'm sure the ones I do know, they do allow anything that you, they do allow loose fitting clothes. If they don't, then go somewhere else or find a burkini with a material that does not stick to you or is loose fitting. So there's loads of burkinis, loads of different materials and loads of different patterns as well. So try to find something which is modest.
Is it permissible to wear different colour jilbabs except black? Yep, that's permissible. Any other colour.
Okay, dressing modestly within the culture is fine, but how does this translate to the UK? Is wearing long maxis better or wearing abayas more in the Saudi side? Okay, now, when we looked at the two ayats, it clearly said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly said, wear a jilbab. Now, when we went over the word jilbab, we saw that jilbab means a piece of cloth over your normal clothes. So if you're wearing a maxi dress, then Sharia would say put a jilbab over it, which is put a abaya over it, from the understanding of the Quranic ayah.
So the next question is, do you have advice for when the boundary between necessary work talk and unnecessary social talk gets blurred? Example, professional networking is basically just socializing in a large global company. You are encouraged to talk to everyone, regardless of whether you work with them, because random people that you meet can prove to be useful contacts in the future. At work, team socials are part of professional working environment and you're expected to go, although I tend to avoid them. Am I right in avoiding them, or is it fine for me to go? So again, when you're working in a company or you're working in a professional environment, keep contact to a minimum where it doesn't spill over into your personal life. So outside of work, or going for, you know, lunch meetings or things like that outside of work when you don't need to. If contact can remain in the professional working environment, keep it there. Don't take it out when it doesn't need to be. And also, if working with random people that you can meet prove to be useful contacts in the future, again, keep it to a minimum. And don't let it spill over into where temptation and lust, those things come into it as well. And also keep yourself in check, keep others in check, recheck your intention from time to time. You know, why are you going to these excessive social meetings outside of work? What is the purpose of them? If you don't need to go, it's nothing work related, you don't go to them. Young Muslim girls want to get dolled up and look nice from time to time as part of their natural feminine behaviour. Do you have any advice for how they can feel feminine and beautiful without displaying their beauty to people who shouldn't be seeing it? That's a really good question, that. First of all, modesty, feminine behaviour, it all comes under conduct. So how you present yourself inside and how you present yourself outside to people. So being beautiful and being feminine, it all comes under how you communicate, your modesty, your behavior, your character, and your conduct with people as well. And again, if you want to get dolled up and you look nice from time to time, you want to put some makeup on, but as long as you keep it within boundaries of Sharia and you're not showing it to people who are your non-mahrams as well. But everybody should embrace how they naturally are as well.
Okay, what is a ruling regarding women wearing non-silver gold rings, non-real silver? That is not allowed. Why is this rule specific to rings, not necklaces? And is it permissible to wear silver and gold-plated rings? Now we have something for this, I'm sure, on the JKN Sisters group and the JKN Fatawa website as well. Please have a look there.
Yeah, that is mentioned on the Fatwa website and the documents as well. Please keep all questions related to the slides and the presentation, please.
Yeah, my daughter doesn't wear jilbab but never dresses to impress, and is simple. She never follows a fashion or wears makeup or adorns herself. She says many girls in jilbab look more attractive when they go out, while she's very simple and boring outside. Okay, yes, we already mentioned that, but that doesn't mean that a jilbab doesn't have to be worn. It still has to be worn, but worn with a simple jilbab. So ask her to put a simple jilbab on. And the people who wear a jilbab, but a very attractive one, they are defeating the purpose of jilbab. So don't focus your attention on them, but focus on your attention on those people who wear a simple one.
So is it better to work in a mixed school or an Islamic boys environment? This has been covered before in the questions and answers. If you have a social media page for something like cooking, for example, and you have male followers, is this still wrong, even if you aren't showing your face, body, or voice, but do post lifestyle stories, or is it okay? So again, is it necessary for something for you to have? Is it a business that you have, that you've got a social media page for? An example, if you're not replying back to male followers, or you're not following back, you're not having actual direct communication with them, then it would be permissible to have something like this. But again, recheck your intention of why you've got this social media page, and is it really necessary to have something like this? Is it for a business purpose?
Yeah, what is your advice for those knowledgeable women who are wearing niqab but with the current trend of having an ornamental jeweled locket type thing on the niqab covering itself? I'm assuming that you are referring to like a label thing at the side of the niqab. Again, if it's so small and you can barely see it, then you can get away with it, it's fine. If you're wearing it to attract attention for pride, then obviously you shouldn't be wearing it, or the best would be just wear a really simple one.
Just to further clarify, a woman's hair may not be exposed to a non-Muslim woman, right? Yes, yeah, it should not be exposed. How can we join the JKN Sisters group? I think the group is already full, but we do have documents that are regularly updated and that can be sent around to other sisters as well. And all our answers on the JKN Fatwa WhatsApp group are all piled into a document. So that